Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so I'll call this meeting of the Sheriff County Board of Supervisors to order. I'll start out with roll call. Jenna is here. Okay, we are all present. So at this time, I would ask you to stand for silent prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's a big crowd that you make sure when you speak right into your mic so they can hear it. You can all hear me?
No, we never can hear.
You never can hear me?
No, I think you're off. Your mic's off.
It's on.
Really?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Now it's on.
Okay, I'm gonna ask that we all speak right into our mic like I'm doing here, and hopefully it'll work. Because we have a big crowd and I want everyone to hear. So you were all sent an agenda. Is there any additions or corrections to that agenda? Okay, seeing none, I would look for a motion to approve. Motion by Johnson, second by Bossard. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, that passes. You were also sent the minutes of the September 16th, 2025 regular meeting. Is there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Okay, hearing none, I would look for a motion to approve those as well. Motion to approve, motion by Wadel, second by Peterson. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So those are approved as well. Now we'll move into our public comment portion. I just want to read, please keep in mind that the county board will not be able to respond to your comments or ask you any questions. Your comments are informational only. If further action is required, your comments or concerns will be directed to the appropriate department or committee for response. Okay, so with that, you'll be given 3 minutes. First one up is Sam Wood.
Our forefathers put together a system of government that was set up for citizens to be able to hold the government accountable. They also set up checks and balances for government to hold themselves accountable. The system has failed, and I'm here to do my part to put the checks and balances back in place. When I first started coming to the board meeting, the system failed me. I was attacked by a county employee, and when the sheriff and the employee's boss, supervisor, did nothing, I reached out to Jarvis and was basically swept under the rug until I came to here to address it. Some of you were present, and my exact words were, I declared war till I get their resignations or they were fired. Well, that ended up with their resignations. I'm not here for war today unless you want one. What I'm here for is to put the checks and balances back in place. I want good people to have a place to turn to where they don't have to deal with the good old boys club, and not only in the sheriff's department, but in every department within this county. Your votes on resolutions in these meetings have consequences. You need to start asking questions and following up on the resolutions. Prime example, the Public Safety Committee led by Jarvis put together a resolution to add a position in the jail with the understanding that we would get state inmates to create revenue for the county. 10 months later, nothing's been done. The committee doesn't follow up, the county board doesn't follow up, and our county suffers. But don't worry, they sold $120 worth of candy bars to cover that cost. Let's get them numbers. Brad McCoy needs to back that claim. The sheriff's department covered up Deputy Dick Pick for 3 years, and who knows what else, because we need victims, right? Well, you have no victims because they were told if they wanted to file a complaint, they would have to give up their phones and everything for them would be looked at. Intimidation has to stop. We need safeguards to not allow the good old boys to cover shit up and rule with intimidation. I also want more accountability from the board and all the committees. Every meeting should be in this room, posted on YouTube, not only for me to watch, but also for the citizens to watch, because we all want accountability. There's obviously more to discuss than 3 minutes will allow, but all the good I have and other ways to get that be heard. So, thanks.
Okay, next we'll have Curtis Brasshart.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak before you. I'm a United States Marine, not on active duty. I've also spent 26 years in law enforcement in many different positions, including the federal hauling illegals. What you need to understand right now is the sheriff's department is a smaller problem of a bigger problem in our governments across the United States and in Washington. And that problem is that we all took an oath. I took an oath as a United States Marine to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. You all, anybody that was elected in this county took the same oath. State statute and city ordinance does not trump federal law. What the county and what the government in this county, Green Lake County, Wisconsin, and Washington, D.C. is, they're in violation of the law under Title 18, 241, and 242. It's called the deprivation of it's called deprivation of rights under the color of law. The problem we got is that they take an oath to the state constitution, but they think that the state constitution, statutes, and ordinances trump federal law. It does not. We need to wake up. I'm in chapter 11 of the military manual on the law of war, which is called belligerent occupation. And that's what we have in this country and our governments right now is belligerent occupation. And that's getting meted out right now. Pretty soon, the mayor and the police chief of Portland will be arrested under military tribunals, and so will the governor and the mayor of Chicago. Pretty soon, this is going to flow clear across the United States, and everybody that takes an oath will be responsible for their oath. Maybe you didn't know, maybe this is what you were taught, that will also be considered. But right now, we have people running our governments that have no business running them because you built a courthouse without the people's permission. That's taxation without representation. And I'm going to follow this through. I'm coming to Waushara County, and we're going to build and we're going to take our government back by the people, for the people. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Next up will be Donna Collada.
Never thought I'd be on this side of it, but here we are. I spoke to Brian Freimark on his last day at the highway department. I was very sorry to see him leave. He explained that he had worked with the public most of his adult life and had enough. We also talked about he could finally enjoy a snowstorm. Waushara lost a very valuable employee who was well respected by other county commissioners as well as the state highway employees. Now that he's gone, the same unwelcome attack has been focused on the sheriff's department. Do any of you understand what it's like to leave your home and go to work and have your family worry about whether or not you're going to come home? Probably not, but it's a real concern. Try going out to answer a domestic abuse call, serve a warrant. Instead of appreciation for the job they do, they're being disrespected, underappreciated, and undermined at every turn. Our sheriff's department is being attacked in the worst possible way, and some of you seem to be buying into this garbage that's spewed by the same person that went after Brian Freimark. If you allow him to get away with this again, Which department or department head will be next? You're dealing with a bully, and worse than that, a cyber bully. The sad thing is, bullies can say whatever they like and not be held responsible or have to prove what they say. If this was one of our children or a family member that was being cyberbullied, we would demand something be done about it. If you check that cap, you probably find most of bully's followers on there. People don't like being arrested and they don't want to go to the county jail. I get it. My fingers don't work. When Wally Zolke was named sheriff. But at first, I'm going to go back to disrespectful things being spewed about our sheriff, chief deputy, 2 lieutenants is nothing less than slander, and it's unwarranted. The board knew when Sheriff Zolke became sheriff that Argo would be part of the sheriff's department, and that was approved by the board. When I was elected to the board, I was reminded by then Sheriff Fox that the only control the board has over the sheriff is the budget. He is an elected official, just like the board members are. Yet Sheriff Zolke has always worked with his committee and with the board. Right now, sadly, it seems to be open season on law enforcement. I never in a million years thought that I would be seeing this in our county. It's sad and it's shameful. Please remember the same people that voted for you likely voted for Sheriff Zolke twice.
Donna, I'm sorry, but your 3 minutes are up.
Okay.
So.
I was almost finished anyway. Thank you, John.
Okay, and last we will have Tara Anderson.
Hello, thank you. I just wanted to come and speak as another concerned citizen of Waushara County and voice my concern for what seems to be happening for what seems like many years in the sheriff's department, and voice my support for the victims that have been sexually assaulted or harassed, I should say, sexually harassed through text messages or Snapchats or any of those things. Support those victims. I hope you guys are truly taking this seriously. It just, one of the cyber posts that Sam had, I don't even know how to express how that made me feel. That 3 years ago, this sheriff was asking people for dick pics and going over to their house to do things. He did an open records request. It's open records. He got them.
I have the receipts.
So I just, wow. So maybe we should all just go look at that one post for sure, of all the facts that are there about that one sheriff, because it just makes me sick. It makes me absolutely sick. And I get it that it maybe didn't happen when some of you people were on the board. We can't change the past, but gosh darn it, we need to do better. Because I am sick about how some of these men and women were treated on duty. Some of them don't even feel safe going to work. Like, I really just want you guys to look at this, not just the sheriff's department, but the whole county. I know there is some good things about the county, but you guys need to look into all of the departments, the morale and the safety of all of our county workers. Please, thank you.
We have no unfinished business. We'll move into new business. We'll move into reports and presentations. First is Waushara County Library's annual report with Winnifox Library System Director Claire Ellen Summersmith and the Waushara County Library Directors. Claire Ellen.
Hello, we're gonna try to keep this short, knowing that you have a long meeting. You're just lucky enough that there's a lot of libraries in your county, so they're all gonna speak, just for 2 minutes, and then we will let you get on with the rest of your meeting. My name is Claire Ellen Somersmith. I am the director of the Winnifox Library System, and, if we wanna go to the next, slide. We put this short PowerPoint of a 2024 year in review, and then the librarians want to thank the county for their additional financial support in 2025. So this is just some statistics from Waushara County Libraries in 2024. You can read it for yourself, but some highlights include 104,000 library visits, which is a 20% increase over 2023. You see libraries really reaching out to rural communities in 2024, including the 991 programs offered for all ages at the 8 libraries in Waushara County. There has been increasing attendance for digital checkouts of items and use of public computers, along with our regular physical items, of which there were 146,056 items checked out in 2024. But I'm going to turn it over to Des Sadowski, the director of the Coloma Public Library, who will highlight what happened to her library specifically.
I hate that it's alphabetical. I'm Deb Sadowski. I'm the director of the Coloma Library. We had a very good year this year. I would like to thank the board for, you were part of what helped us make, we did a story walk this year at the Coloma Community Park. And if it wasn't for your help with raising the money for that, it's something that the whole park is being rejuvenated, and this is one of those ways that the library can work with the community and let the community feel that they're part of the library. We also had a Badger Talk. We filled our community center. We overflowed our community center. It was on the Edmonds Fitzgerald, which the 50th anniversary was this year. There was about 150 people, so it was about half the population of Coloma that attended. So it was, like I said, it was a good year all around, and I want to thank you for your support.
My name is Lisa Aish. I'm the director at Hancock. My slides represent some of the activities that happened this year. The big one for Hancock is we have a building project. That picture was taken in September, and since then we have made progress. We don't have an official date as for the completion, but we anticipate it to be the end of this year. We had Heidi come out from the extension and do the craft. That picture is up on the top corner. The other side, we had the Legion ladies do our ice cream social for the end of our summer reading program. One of our big activities is our pumpkin decorating. I invite the kids to come to the library and decorate a pumpkin. The pumpkins in this slide are from 2024, so we're just starting this year's. But what we do with those pumpkins, we take them out into the community during trick-or-treat hours and have people vote on them and pick their favorite two. The last one is a slide represents our story walk, which we started in 2019 at Whistler Mounds. That story walk has seen a lot of wear and tear, so those wooden posts and wooden displays, with your special project funding, we are replacing the display tops with a metal and plexiglass display, which will greatly improve the story walk and the little park. So I thank you for making that happen for us.
Hi, my name is Carly. I'm from the Pine River Library. The Pine River Library and our surrounding community really thank you for your special project funds this year. The Pine River Library is a very special place to the people in our small rural community. It acts as the only public space for people in Pine River to gather, learn, find support, and enjoy access to free books and movies. So far in 2025, we've served over 1,500 people with our programming. Thanks to your support, we're able to purchase a new printer, scanner, and fax machine, which was much needed. We use this in a variety of ways, and it's proven to be extremely helpful with our day-to-day business, specifically with our programming. Patrons also use our printer and fax machines for job applications, resumes, and school and work needs. We were also able to install a security system. The addition of the security system will allow patrons and employees to feel safe using the library. Being located in a rural area, this is extremely important in ensuring that the library is safe, accessible, and comfortable for all. Thank you again.
Hi, I'm Mara. I'm the new director at Plainfield. I've only been there since the end of July, so this is my first county board meeting. So I'm just here to give you, I know, right? Hi, everyone. So I'm just going to talk briefly because I am so new. I don't have a whole lot to share, but some of the things that the library has done since I've been there and what you see represented on our slides there is right before I officially started, we hosted Reggie, which is the Raptor Educational Group out of Antigo, I believe, or Antigo. Sorry, yeah, I'm not from Wisconsin either, so I'm working on those pronunciations. But we hosted them at the school as part of our summer reading program, and we had a great turnout because it was right during summer school and everybody really loved it and enjoyed it. The other pictures that you see up there are from our summer reading program wrap up. That was very much something that I was handed and I just kind of went with it and it was what it was and it's fine. And next year will be different. So I would like to thank the county though, because thanks to your special funding, it took a while for us to come to an agreement, but we finally did. Thanks to your special funding, our library is finally going to get new carpet. We don't think that we've had new carpet since it was built. So it is a little threadbare, incredibly stained. So this is going to be a very, very welcome makeover, giving us a fresh new look and really helping to create a warm and inviting community for all, or warm and inviting environment for all the things that I'm hoping to bring to the library in the coming years. So thank you so much.
Good job.
That's gonna be a little hard to follow, but my name is Marcia Schneider. I am also a new director at the Poisey Public Library. We are a very small library, one of the smallest ones in Waushara County, and just being a part of the libraries in Waushara County is very special. I've learned that over the year. The communities within the communities that help support me has been great. Just a little overview of some of the pictures up there with your contributions. We were able to upgrade and replace a rotted wall on our entrance, and we re-sided it. And then we were also able to paint the trim and around the entrance and also had those locally built new picnic tables for our community. We have a wonderful green space around our library. In addition, we were able to offer robust art programs for the summer reading program, which was Color Our World. In addition, we love to partner with some local groups, including the WIC Mobile Office, 4-H group, which helps us with our Easter egg hunt, and some of the younger kids help us with our spring cleanup. And the Waushara Gardeners, especially Kathy Shaw, who worked with us to donate a bench for our entrance. They collect plastic bags and donate benches throughout the community. And they also help with our large green space. Being a smaller library, it's still a full-time green space. So just having all that help has been great. And just want to thank you all for your continued support. Every little bit really counts at our library, so thank you.
I get to be Jeannie McBride today. She's the director of Macbeth. She's the director of the Red Granite Public Library, and she's not able to join us today. But she wanted to thank the county for their additional special project money. That is going toward a couple projects on the outside of the building. One is, I'm sure you've driven through Red Granite, as everybody in this county has, and they are putting an electronic sign in that parking lot to advertise community events and library programs instead of having the hand sign. And so the funding went partially to that project, as well as the library will be getting a storage shed in their backyard so that they can renovate their current storage room to a meeting room, which, as you know, is so important in today's world with virtual meetings and having private spaces to have those conversations, have those work meetings, have those medical appointments. So that is what Red Granite Public Library is working on, thanks to your support.
Hi, I'm Hannah from the Watoma Public Library. On our slide, we had chicks hatch at the library this summer. It was very fun. We had about 20 eggs and 12 eggs, and about 5 of them hatched. The little guy in the middle is Spurt, and very cute. We also had a Skins and Skulls program where we had Carl Messman come, and the kids were able to touch the animal pelts and guess which skulls the animals belonged to. For our summer reading program, one of our staff made that cute little ice cream truck, food truck. It served as well. With the special funding project money, we got a new copy machine. It's very useful for scanning documents to email. We make color copies. We can send faxes with it. It gets used probably more than anything else. We get people from ACE, they'll send people our way and say, oh, you can do that at the library. And so we're kind of become the tech hub for people. We also started doing experience passes. So our patrons can check out Milwaukee Zoo passes, Children's Museum passes for Appleton and Stevens Point. And we have a historical society pass, so you can go to 10, 12 different locations in the state. And yeah, it's great. Thank you so much.
I'm Ken Barnard. I'm not a new director. This is my 15th year in Wild Rose. You can see what I want to really thank you for is what we use the money you gave us for is you'll see beautiful pictures of our lights, which doesn't show you anything about how they've changed, but we had 3 different lights and 4 different ballasts. And so every time they had to change something, they had to find the right ballast. And some of the ballasts were getting to the point where you couldn't find them anymore to replace them. So we replaced all of the lights, including in the community center, with LED lights. They will pay for themselves. They said in 5 years, but because of the ballast, I believe they'll actually pay for themselves probably in about 2.5 years. So we'll get the return on the investment is amazing. You'll see we got our job pod. We had that put in about a year ago for people to come up, sit in an area where they could apply for a job, to do an interview. It's nearly soundproof. I'm not gonna say it's soundproof, but it's nearly soundproof, but it is private. And then up in the corner, we did have the last, escape room we did was a Harry Potter escape room. And a nice family came through and they took second. But they did really well, so. Thank you again. Thanks for the money. That's it.
We don't have anything else to add, and we hope that your budget process goes smoothly, and we hope you continue to support the libraries as well as you had. And we thank you, each of the trustees who are serving on library boards as well. Your participation in library boards really make a difference, so thank you.
And thank you all for being such a positive part of our county. Does anybody have any questions for our librarians while they're here? Okay, very good report again. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we'll move into the 2026 proposed budget with our county administrator, Megan Catt.
I just want to let everybody know that I'm not suicidal. Thank you very much. Have a great evening, folks.
Well, nobody warned me a year ago when I decided to take this position that my first budget presentation would have such a great turnout, so it is a good one for you to all be here for though, so. So I'm gonna try to stay as concise as I can, but provide the information that I think is helpful for you all to know going into the budget hearing in November. So just looking back at the budget timeline, as you are all aware, the budget is a long process beginning back in March when departments start to submit and gather their information for their capital improvement plan requests. Those requests are currently vetted through the strategic planning committee. Those are reviewed in May and June. And then in June and July, departments work on submitting their budget requests to the finance director. Finance director and I review those with departments in departmental meetings in August and September. And here we are in October, presenting our proposed budget to you. The proposed budget will need to be voted on in November. In November 4th, we will have the public hearing on the budget and then the adoption after that. So just to share where these numbers are coming from in the budget, I'm going to start with net new construction. The net new construction value is provided to us in mid-August. It comes from the DOR. This is the net new construction is the new buildings and improvements less any demolitions. So this is what essentially limits our tax growth per Wisconsin state statute. So you can see 2025 we had 1.16% net new construction. It was up slightly from 2024. So how does the levy limit work? Where does this number come from? So Wisconsin law allows an increase in your tax levy based upon your increase in valuation due to that net new construction. So if we start at the top with our 2025 tax levy was around 23 million. Our allowable increase for net new construction is $184,000. There are certain budgets listed below there that are outside of that levy limit and not subject to that particular limit. So you can see the libraries, which are actually going to see a decrease in their budget for 2026. And then the debt service and EMS budgets are outside of the levy limit. So that leads us to the proposed tax levy of 23.8 million for 2026. That's about a 3.5% increase in the levy over the 2025 budget. Just want to show you what the mill rate has done over the last handful of years. You can see it's been pretty consistently decreasing. 2025's mill rate was 5.21. The proposed mill rate is a 37-cent decrease for 2026. This chart shows you over several years what our total expenditures for the county have looked like. So the total bar there is all of the expenses. The blue section of that is the portion of our expenses that have been funded by the tax levy. We have consistently had about 40% of our expenses funded by the tax levy. And then the numbers there, you can see what the tax levy has increased over the last handful of years. So 2025, we saw about a 3% increase, and then we'll see about a 3.5% increase for 2026 as well. This chart is showing you what the equalized value has looked like over the last handful of years. So taxing jurisdictions, counties, school districts, we apportion municipalities the amount that they need to tax their residents based upon the equalized value. So you can see here in about 2022 is where we start seeing that increase in equalized value with the housing market. Because of that increase in equalized value, that's why we've seen, this is the mill rate history in a graph chart. Around that same time that we see the equalized value going up, that mill rate is going down. So as our equalized value continues to increase, we're going to continue to see a decrease in our mill rate. So in the proposed 2026 budget, we have just over $58 million in expenditures. I've broken it down there based upon that $23.8 million tax levy and how that's broken up in the different areas there. You can see the general government category at about 9.4 million. Debt payment is going to be serviced by 5.3 million of tax levy next year. Aging, highway, human services, and EMS are all broken out in separate areas up there. So I've been very open with sharing with where we're at with budget requests. So I just want to touch base. As you know, we started our requests much higher than where we've ended today. Our original levy, or the request for the levy originally came in at a need of 27.6 million. On the left there is what we had for 2025. So just to kind of break this down, we had, as a county, decided our need for the levy in 2025 was 24.6 million. because of levy limit restrictions, we were able to levy 23 million. So in 2025, we applied about 1.6 million of reserves to offset our needs in 2025. For 2026, you can see we held the line to 24.8 for our need. So from what we said we needed in 2025 to what we say we need for next year, that's a 0.8% increase, $200,000 going up in what we said we needed. So based on the restrictions with the levy limit, we're able to propose a levy of 23.8 million. And that is then suggesting utilizing 1 million from our reserves. So from our original requests that were submitted to where we're at now, we've found almost a $3 million reduction. I want to be transparent in the things that I've removed from what was originally requested by departments. So there's quite a few positions in here. We've had a couple of positions in administration, UW Extension. The educator positions are contracted positions, but do have a proposal to remove one of those. Human Services was able to remove a couple of positions through attrition. Aging restructured some of their nutrition program and was able to reduce almost a full-time FTE through that restructure. Public Health reduced a public health nurse and was able to utilize one nurse for a couple of the school nursing contracts that we have. Reduced 1 highway patrolman, 1.5 courthouse security positions, and the 2 12 to 12 patrol deputies, you'll recall, were eliminated with a restructuring of that department earlier this year. A handful of other positions here, these did not have levy impact, but I do just want to point out because they do reduce our overall FTE count. Public Health lost a couple of environmental health specialist positions due to a dissolution of a tri-county consortium there. Zoning and land conservation lost an agronomist that was fully grant funded. And highway is down 3 additional patrolmen due to the ending of a couple of municipal contracts. We've added 1 position in for next year. Again, this was with the restructure resolution with the elimination of the 2 patrol deputies. We created a transport deputy position in the sheriff's department to aid with some of those transport needs and scheduling, and overall net of a loss of about 16 total FTEs for next year. Other items that were removed from the budget, I will not go through all of those in detail, but you can see them listed up there. Several items that were removed from the CIP projects for next year. And then a few other items in general, we looked at, training and travel countywide, including the county board's budget as well. We had some additional increase in revenues. We had a proposed, I'm sorry, not a proposed at this point, but we have a reduction in the HSA contribution for employees, removal of a Winnebago Waterways contract that we've been participating in for a couple of years. On the employee benefits front for what's included in the budget, so health insurance, we were incredibly grateful to receive another flat renewal from GHT. This now marks the 4th year in a row that we have either had a decrease or a flat renewal in health insurance premiums for our employees, which is really unheard of in the industry and has been a really huge help for the budget. A dental and vision insurance, we also had a flat renewal that is 100% paid by the employee. And then I mentioned that slight reduction in the HSA contribution. So currently the county, for individuals that are on our high deductible health plan, we put in for a family plan of $355 per month to an HSA. And if it's a single plan, we contribute $177.50 monthly. So the executive committee approved a reduction to $300 and $150 for those HSA contributions. The state retirement contribution rates are set by the state. That's not anything we have control over, but I just point that out that there is a slight increase for the general employee category and a slight decrease for the protected employee category there. Compensation wise, employees who are on the county wage grid will receive their typical step increase. The scale is also going to receive a 2% wage adjustment for COLA, and then the EMS and sheriff union pay adjustments are per their contract. Items that are included in the capital improvement plan, of course, they're included in the packet, but this is just broken down. We have 5.4 million in expenditures that are proposed in the CIP, broken down by how those are funded. 1.6 of that, 1.7 is on the tax levy. You can see about 3.2 of that is allocated towards highway and bridge projects. We'll point out almost 2 million, I think 1.8 million is from federal funding for bridge aid for next year. The highway equipment of 1.3 is actually a self-funded equipment revenue fund that they have that's generated based upon their revenues from servicing other municipalities and their state contract and such. Sheriff's Department has 2 squads in there, flat cameras, a steamer in the jail kitchen, a changeover of pistols, and some other additional recurrent expenses included in their CIP. At the Parks Department, there's a proposal to redo the boat ramp at Cusel Lake, purchase a mower for the park, and a dam inspection is needed at Lake Alpine. And they will also be redoing the Mount Morris pickleball court. And then we will have an ambulance replacement purchase that is going to be funded through their undesignated reserves. And then a few other items are just some general like vehicle or equipment replacement items. So I want to touch on, just so that we're aware of where we are at from a general fund reserve balance. This is kind of our rainy day fund. So per county policy that was set many years ago, the county reserves a minimum of 25% of expenditures of the general fund, EMS fund, and county road and bridges fund. So 25% of those expenses is what we need to maintain on hand as our rainy day fund, as our reserves in case they are needed. So year end last year, our financial statements ended with 9.3 million in those reserves. That is already accounting for the 1.6 that was applied to the 2025 budget. That was in a separate committed fund because it was committed for this year's expenses. So the proposal for next year is to utilize almost $1,997,000 from the undesignated, uncommitted reserves for next year's budget. After that's utilized, that leaves 8.3 in there, which is still leaving us at about 121% of our required reserves that we need to have in there. I won't go through all of these in super detail, but these are other fund balances that are proposed to be utilized for one-time projects or CIP items. If you recall, each year the county board approves a resolution of committed funds, and those are funds that are carried over from year to year. Some are budgeted line items that are put back into these funds each year. Some of them are carry over if there's actually revenues from a particular program area, but those are committed to specific uses. Those uses are set by the county board, and through the budgeting process, those are applied towards these particular projects or items that we're purchasing. So next steps with the budget process, obviously, we're reporting and discussing on it tonight. If there's any questions that I can answer, we're asking over the next week and a half or so that you take a look at the budget that was provided to you, reach out to me or Sarah with any specific questions or additional information that you might need. And we're asking that next week, Thursday, would be the deadline for you as county board members to submit any proposed amendments to myself or to Finance Director Sarah Lucchini. We'll then put any numbers together that we need to for you. November 4th will be the budget public hearing, and it will be part of the November 4th County Board meeting. So the hearing will be held immediately in the beginning, and then later on in the agenda, you will then vote on the adoption of that budget with any proposed amendments. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Anybody have any questions for Megan? We've all kind of looked at these throughout the last couple of weeks as well, but does anybody have any concerns or questions? Okay,
So, when we're looking at that, $9.4 million.
Yep.
Okay, and then we're looking at the $997,000 coming out of it for next year. That leaves 8.4. Okay, now is that already taking into account the 1.6 is deducted from this already?
That's
So-
already out of there.
And do we anticipate any of that 1.6 being returned at the end of the year?
It is too early to tell, but I am not planning on that.
Okay,
If there is, that would be great. But I am not going to tell you that we'll be returning that because I don't know that at this point. There are potentially some savings from some vacant positions and other things. If you recall, we received $200,000 check earlier this year from our ODIP money from the building project. So there are some things that are could potentially benefit us at year end, but there are some other challenges as well. So it's definitely too early to anticipate what we might return this year.
thank you. Any other questions?
That's just another question. So, I've talked with you and Sarah on the budget, and the two of you have expressed to us that you've done a much better job this year in getting the fluff out of the budget, right? So the fluff in the budget has always been, since I've been on the board, I've been told, well, we don't need to worry too much about taking out of the reserve because we've got a lot of fluff in the budget. We're gonna put it back in at the end of the year, which has happened in the past, right? And you guys have now reduced that fluff down to a real actual budget. So the anticipation of next year returning anything is probably way less than this year, correct?
Correct.
So when I do the numbers the same way, the way Dave did, that leaves us with about a $1.2, $1.3 million next year to be able to pull out for next year's budget.
Please know I have no intentions of using 1.2 the following
Okay,
year. So
so my end question is, what are you gonna do, or what are we all going to be able to do so we don't pull out of the general fund the following year?
So if we look back at history, I went back to 2019, each year we have taken more and more and more and more from our undesignated fund. While there were healthier amounts in there at other times or even excess that needed to be utilized, the last 4 years, we've used over $1 million to balance our budget. So this is the first in 5 years that we're now getting that just below there. My goal this year, we reduced that by 36%. So we took 1.572 for this year. We're proposing 997 for next year. We reduced that by 36%. So we are going to have to do the same thing again next year. We are going to need to make reductions again next year and hold the line so that we continue to close that gap.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, just one more question. So we're given 11 days or so to review a half a tree here, whatever. Next year, I'd certainly like to see this much earlier, so at least we've got time to digest this.
Yeah.
And how we make that work, I don't know, but I've been frustrated since I've been on the board to be able to go through all this and try to digest this and come back and feel good about ratifying this budget when I don't even have the time to, personally go through it thoroughly, right?
Sure.
So that would be a request of mine, and maybe the other board members like to see this much earlier in this process, so we can at least go through it more efficiently.
Yeah, I think that's fair feedback. I think it's challenging to get too far to the detail because a lot of the numbers that we're waiting on to get the budget proposal together aren't available to us until August or September, which is why the timeline is the way it is. However, especially been through it, and Sarah's been through it many years, I do think that we can get a pretty close ballpark if we were to bump up the timeline a year. Not a year, that I can't do, a month next year. I also longer term vision, what I would like to see from the board, and obviously this is my first budget going through this, but what I would like to see is earlier in the process, perhaps springtime, doing a budget prioritization session where we can set some of our guidelines earlier on, as far as when we get down to it, we know we are going to have to make some additional reductions next year. What are the priorities for the public, for the board, from administration, that we need to make sure that we're including and prioritizing those things?
Can we go back to the slide where you have that timeline, Megan?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, the very first slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and I agree with Mr. Peterson that it would be way more beneficial for us to be able to be receiving this document, you know, in that September month. In order to go through it, because I know I see your face.
Well, and the reason I say that is because the levy limit worksheet is not even available to us until I think like September 9th it came out this year. And that's what's really gives us our definitive of, okay, this is how much you're allowed to increase specifically. Again, we can get a ballpark, right, within
So then
a couple
maybe,
$100,000.
then maybe another option would be that then for 2 months in a row, that then we have to have an earlier board meeting. So instead of having this meeting at the end of the month, giving us a week and a half, 2 weeks to go through 170, I think 170 some odd pages, 146 pages of the budget, you know, to be also, you know, give us a little bit more time. And then also, I do appreciate the fact of getting budget prioritization. I think that's an excellent idea to include the board earlier on in that decision-making process. Thank you.
Can I make one charge? I don't know if this is.
You just have to talk for a little bit.
I gotta talk a little bit more.
There you go.
Okay. So each one of us board members sits on multiple committees, and we have departments that report to us on these committees that we sit on. So I take responsibility as well as throughout the entire year, we should be holding all the department heads accountable to those committees to report their budgets to the committee. And we can be watching these budgets and asking questions and really helping Megan in the process throughout the entire year. If we're all, you know, charging those committees that we're on with, how can we tighten things up? There's a level of proactiveness on our part that can help this process throughout the entire year as well. So then we're looking through, we should be able to look through that budget and not even have to look at the sections that we're on the committees for, because we already know it, you know.
We also know that we've had to cut the last 5 years or whatever, so we're going to have to cut again next year. So start thinking right now, you know, your individual departments where you will have to try and look for some savings again another year, because it's gonna happen. So is there any other?
I've got one more
comment
I wanna make. You know, we're gonna be rolling out strategic planning, first of the year thereafter, not long after. You know, that's a good placeholder also for in strategic plannings for financial stuff. And then I just want to make sure that we're also adding some of the stuff in the financial section in our strategic planning for the departments to actually be working on it all year long. So they're not waiting until when you come to them and say, we got to do budget, now we have to reduce $4 million, how are we going to do it? That's got to be part of their strategic plan. So they're working on it every single day of the year.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, any other comments?
Megan, there are a number of departments that are way over a large increase.
Sure.
And if you add some, I mean, assuming at the next meeting, you'll go over and explain why there are such large increases in some departments.
I can do that tonight. So this is my chance to present to you. So yeah, I can certainly speak to some of that. Specifically, I will speak to facilities, which if you look at the allocation of the budgeted tax levy, it looks like it's a $600,000 increase or a 86% increase. So just so that you are aware, that is due to a change in how we are allocating some of our maintenance costs and utility costs. So previously, those charges were billed out to departments directly.
And we worked with our indirect cost auditor to try to find some efficiencies with some of our financial processes, and that was one of the changes that we will be taking for 2026 is we won't be billing those out to departments any longer. So that's why it looks like that budget has such a huge increase. Almost $500,000 of that is accounted for by those maintenance charges and those utility charges. So that's what that large increase is. County clerk is a 23% increase. That's due to the nature of the election cycle. You go from a 4-year election to a 2-year election, and that budget dips. So this year is a 2-year election. Next year, there are 4 scheduled elections. Other particular ones. Pardon?
The victim witness, I see it's percentage higher, it's not.
Yeah, that's a very small budget, so any small change there makes that look like a significant percentage wise. EMS, I will speak to a little bit. So for 2024 and 2025, their tax levy was the same at about that 2 million. Go back a few years, it was at 2.4, so there was a reduction in that levy. And that budget actually saw an operating loss for 2024 and is projected to potentially have one this year as well. So that's a little bit of a course correction to ensure that that department is appropriately funded for next year.
Okay, that's it. Good, Pat. Anybody else?
Just back on the EMS, but when I look deep into the EMS part of the budget, it looks like that's all write-offs is what it is.
So
Or is there something convoluted there I don't understand?
potentially, we could talk a little bit further in detail on some of that. Some of the increase is cost of ambulances has risen astronomically. Some of that is projected lesser revenues. Some of that is in how we are budgeting the revenues and the write-offs, and so we can look at that in a little further detail if we'd like to.
Okay.
And did you say that the new ambulance for next year, that's coming out of their undesignated funds?
That's coming out of their undesignated funds. They've got about 1.9 in there currently. And that was our suggestion. We also verified with our auditor that that was a good financial move to pull any capital equipment there from that, since they do have a healthy reserves there.
That's what the identical $313,000 were.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So then what's the future of that 1.9 then? Is there not any plan with it?
No, that's essentially their undesignated.
He really doesn't have, Keith doesn't have an outlook of what he's gonna do with that in the future, do you know, or not?
Keith, do you have an outlook of what you're gonna do with that in the future? At this point, it's suggested to utilize that for capital purchases, but that's essentially a separate rainy day, reserves fund. So if we have issues with Medicare, Medicaid, where we are seeing operating losses, that's what would cover that.
Anybody else? Okay, now keep in mind too, what Megan said, if you have any proposed amendments to this, get it to her and Sarah by next Thursday. Otherwise, we'll be voting on that on the 4th. So thank you, Megan. You worked diligently on this and we appreciate it. So, very good. Now we'll move into the Department of Highway annual report with our Highway Commissioner, Dean Anderson.
Good evening. My name is Dean Anderson. We're Sheriff County Highway Commissioner. Tonight I'll be presenting the 2024 annual report. I'll keep this short since I know we got a full agenda tonight. Can you put down? I guess in 2024, our actual tax levy for the highway department was $3,002,193. Is up $189,200 from the previous year. And our actual revenue generated was $8,702,751, also up from the previous year.
Did you flip it on the side? I had shut it off. I'm sorry.
Say in 2024, the county, we paved 6.34 miles on County H, and we seal coated 14.34 miles on County E, County I, and County A. We also paved a total of 4.6 miles for several of the townships and villages in the county, and we seal coated 32.28 miles in 9 townships and villages. In 2024, we served 9 townships: Plainfield, Oasis, Rose, Springwater, Bloomfield, Deerfield, Watoma, Coloma. And the beginning of the season, we took care of Marion, but they, in the fall, we did not because they chose to go with someone else. So in 2024, we plowed 132 state miles, or 132 miles of state roads, 333 miles of county roads. We started out with 429 miles of town roads, but like I say, in the fall, we're down to 375.4 miles, which totals about 840 miles that we plowed the remainder of the years. Our revenue expense was down in 2024, 310,827 from the previous year. Say in 2024, we did have 2 supplemental road grants in the last biennium. One was completed in 2024 on the County JJ Bridge, which we had a reimbursement of $436,426. And the second supplemental grant that we were awarded, we did not complete that project till 2025. And that was for $244,813. And that one, we are currently in the process of getting the reimbursement for that. We also did have a County E Bridge project that was completed this year. I guess on there it does show we got 334,000, but technically we don't get that reimbursement. That's what the state contributed to it. And I think we had to pay about 152,000 towards that project. In 2024, let's say the highway department, we purchased 2 of the Kenworth triaxle plow trucks, 1 new Kenworth quad axle truck. We had 1 2003 Peterbilt semi tractor, a 2014 Etmeyer chip spreader, a 2012 John Deere Gator, and the 1 floor scrubber. I guess that's about all I have. I'd like to thank the county for their support, and like I say, if there's anything, any questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Dean?
Dean, thank you for your presentation, and I'm excited that you're gonna move this department forward. And I hope that if we get a massive snowstorm on Thanksgiving, that you'll be able to get the roads cleaned, because as was mentioned in public comments, you know, Snowstorm Gate was a big thing with the previous commissioner.
We do have many plows already mounted for our state trucks, and we're continuing getting them set up as we speak.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Any other questions? Okay. All right. With that, then we'll move into the discussion, possible action items. I is opioid funding request for program fees and rent.
So as everybody is aware, we do have the priority list that can be approved without coming to county board. This request is partial priority and partial not priority. So it is not only for rent, it is also for program fees for an individual who is living in sober living and attending various AODA treatments for his opioid addiction. The amount that is being requested is $1,500. Our current balance in that fund of unallocated money is $126,512.
Okay, everybody understand that? Did you get those? Is there any questions?
Yeah, I got a question. So, reading through Juan's note, it seemed like this was more like alcohol related. issues in math in the past, and I'm not sure, when we were discussing what these opioid funds would be used towards, I'm not sure if this was the original intent. I'm, in my opinion, to even consider something like this, if this is through the Waushara Shines program, this should be like a joint application where they're coming forward along with the person requesting the funds saying, yeah, here's the program costs, we're advocating that, this person is showing good participation in this program, and we're in full support of them requesting these funds. We think that it would be good. We've got a nice note from them, but we don't know, other than what he stated, what the participation rate has been, what, we're missing that component from Waushara Shines, I think. So I don't know if it would be appropriate to table this and ask for it to be reapplied with that participation. But
You could move the table.
yeah, could I make a motion to table it?
Yeah, that would take priority. Is there a second on that? Second by Wakely. Is there any, well, we don't discuss it, I guess. We'll proceed to vote on that, or
I did have one more comment. I just wanted to echo what Jesse was saying. I had the same concerns. The other thing, also, I mean, the person generally actually needs some help according to what I see here, but if we look at the opioid funds, I mean, that's for Oxycontin and morphine and fentanyl, which he's not describing that that's what he's on, right? I just want to make sure that we're all staying in the scope of what this is for, which is for misuse of opioids and not for alcohol and meth too. So I just wanted to echo the same thing, concerns that Jesse had too on that, so.
okay, all right. Any other comments? We'll go ahead and vote on that then. This is the vote to table this. Okay, the vote to table has passed, so we'll move on. Okay, next is discussion on the Veterans Office from September public comment. And Megan, are you gonna summarize that? We got a report from Bill, and Bill, maybe he's online, maybe.
Yeah, so our County Veteran Service Officer, Bill Rosenow, is online. And he provided a correspondence to you. So just to follow up from the comments from last month, it was asked to be a discussion item this month, but just to touch base on, actually prior to last month's county board meeting, Bill and I had met to talk about what some of the challenges are in his office. So his office is currently a staff of 2 full-time himself and an assistant CVSO as well. And so talked about some of the concerns and the challenges in trying to get through some of his backlog with also dealing with the public daily of people walking in, obviously phone calls and things like that. And so we're working on ways, how can we gain some of those efficiencies? One of the first things we implemented, which him and his staff are fully on board with, is we're attempting a 4-10s schedule between the 2 of them. So that they have some uninterrupted time in the office. I think he's been doing it for 3 or 4 weeks now and has indicated he's already put a big dent into his backlog, and that it's been a really helpful way for him to start getting through some of that. So that's one of the things. I don't know, Bill, if you're on, if you have anything additional that you would like to add, but just wanted to report that back to you. If there's any additional, discussion or questions that anybody would like to share, this would be the time.
Definitely good steps towards solving some of that problem. Is there any comment? Bill, do you have any comments, or maybe he's not on?
It's absolutely amazed, honestly, Chairman Jarvis, thank you for letting me speak. Yeah, the 410s, absolute game changer. It let me clear off some of the day-to-day minutia from my desk and allow me to concentrate on the appeals, which is the majority of the backlog. The one other thing that I'm looking at is the potential to move to a telephone tree or a message handling system that would put us in
a proactive response mode rather than a reactive response mode. I think we could also gain some efficiencies from that. I am concerned with the potential public perception that we're putting ourselves out of reach, but I think actually our timeliness on responses will improve, again, by placing us in a proactive response role. So subject to your questions.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Bill? Okay, very good. All right, thank you both. All right, next we'll move to the Wautoma School incident regarding county dispatch training protocol, and the city of Wautoma Police Chief Mott is going to address us.
I just got a handout for you guys really quick.
All right. Good evening, members of the county board and members of the public. My name is Paul Mott. I am the chief of police for the city of Wautoma. I'm here today because of the delayed response to an active threat at Wautoma High School on October 9th, 2025. This cannot be ignored, excused, or brushed under the rug. I will present the facts and some recommendations for the future. I'm meeting many of you for the first time. I want you to understand who I am and clarify my motives. For those that do not know me, I have been in law enforcement for over 30 years. My career began as a 911 dispatcher. I held positions throughout my career that include child forensic interviewer, law enforcement instructor, gang, drug, and auto theft unit supervisor, homicide investigator, canine supervisor, SWAT, and federal agent with the DEA. I have stood at the scene of an active school shooting with 6 dead and 17 injured. When this call came in, I was taken back to the memory of that classroom with rivers of blood that joined to form a pool of blood in the front of that room. As I speak about this tonight, I ask that you think about that image and the safety of our children. Some formal and informal leaders say, I am bringing attention to this matter to create a divide between agencies or to run for sheriff. I am not running for sheriff. I seek transparency and a united response to emergencies. As the strangers in this room judge my character, I ask that you think about what I gained from speaking the truth or assisting the Department of Justice with investigations into the sheriff's office. This was not a choice. As the DOJ indicated, I had to take the initial report on the misconduct of public office cases before they would look at them. So far, I have gained angry coworkers, sleepless nights, a caseload at work that limits my normal job duties, and an attempt to have me removed from my job to end any misconduct of public office investigations. That is what I have gained. On October 9th, Wautoma students, teachers, and families in our community face the unimaginable. A report of a possibly armed student on a school campus. In those moments, every second mattered. Every second was the difference between safety and tragedy. But what failed them, what failed all of us, was not just the fear or confusion of the moment. It was the breakdown in response by us not working as a team. I would like to share some background and details of this call with you. These issues are not new. I attempted to address them with the sheriff and other administration at the sheriff's office numerous times. The last attempt I made was over a year ago, and I was informed the sheriff entered the radio room when I left and laughed about my request and exclaimed nothing was going to change. The issues continued, including failed responses to medical emergencies. In March, I, along with other police agencies, met with corporate counsel and shared these issues. One that resulted in a death where a Watoma officer was never dispatched to a person in cardiac arrest. The officer was 1 block away from the incident with an AED. I then took the issues to the Watoma Common Council. This resulted in Mayor Nixon meeting with the sheriff about dispatch concerns. The mayor was later notified the sheriff entered the radio room when he left and laughed about his request and exclaimed nothing was going to change. There were many more attempts to take corrective action with no success, some that included officer safety issues involving weapons offenses. The only thing left to do for our children was to shout it from the rooftop, which some of you took as creating division. If anyone indicates these issues are resolved or this was an isolated incident, my department is available to speak in further detail. The first thing I learned as a dispatcher was the 6 W's, and I've shared some training forms with you tonight. Aside from providing customer service, dispatcher basic training teaches them to ask callers many questions that include who, what, when, where, why, and weapons. Callers to the 911 center are often in a state of panic or fear. It is the dispatcher's job to ask these 6 W's and be the calm in the storm for any caller. I spoke to dispatchers in Waushara County following the incident at the high school. The ones I spoke to were unaware of the 6 W's. Incident summary. At 1:18 p.m., Waushara Human Services called the 911 center and said they need the city of police for a police incident at the high school. The caller was instructed to call the high school for assistance. The social worker then tried calling the school and me with no answer. She then calls dispatch a second time, reports a possibly armed subject to dispatch, and is transferred to the school resource officer's phone. I was out of the county and off duty, but ended up responding to the missed call and speaking with a different human services employee. I learned there was possibly an armed student making homicidal threats at the high school. I notified SRO Hendrickson, who was already searching for the offender. I tried calling Lieutenant Rosine with no making an arrest on an unrelated call. I called dispatch at 1:28 p.m. and learned no officers had been dispatched to the armed subject and no call had ever been disseminated over the radio. Dispatch offered to transfer me to a deputy's phone and I requested they dispatch it over the radio. I began responding to Watoma High School, not armed for duty and in my personal car. The call was entered into the CAD system for the incident at 1:30 p.m. A dispatch release confirmed additional officers were sent at 1:28 p.m. At 1:32 p.m., Jennifer Johnson with the Watoma Area School District notified me the suspect was in custody. I broke down with emotion. Not only knowing that my children were safe, but also the 383 other students I take personal responsibility for. I realized in that moment, I failed our kids by not publicly addressing the prior failures. I learned 3 of the deputies on duty responded to assist, and I am grateful for their response. Some social media reports have indicated there was 24 deputies on duty. Some trying to create division or divisiveness have said that I indicated they did not respond. I never did that. And I believe that those deputies, had they known about that call and had it been placed on the radio, would have been standing alongside Officer Hendrickson. We now know that the 911 center did not follow proper protocol. They failed to gather crucial details immediately from the caller, utilizing the 6 W's. There was a delay in dispatching law enforcement to the school. There were missed opportunities, critical minutes lost, because questions were not asked and action was not taken with the urgency that an active school threat demands. We cannot measure success by the absence of tragedy when it was only luck or the actions of others that kept that from happening. We must measure our response against what should have happened and it fell short. Let me be clear. 911 dispatchers are the true first responders. They are the lifeline between the public and emergencies. Their job is to gather information quickly, relay it accurately, and dispatch responders without delay, especially in an active threat situation where national standards tell us that immediate action is not just preferred, it is required. We must make sure the 911 dispatchers and Lieutenant McElroy are receiving the support, pay, and training they need. Please consider supporting the 911 dispatchers and Lieutenant McElroy. I'm here today to request the creation of an Emergency Telephone System Board, ETSB. I worked in 3 counties prior to Waushara, and all 3 had an ETSB. The board may be comprised of 1 representative from each emergency response agency in the county, along with county board members. This would be fire, police, EMS, etc. A board of this nature may seek over time the following. 1, accountability. If policies are not followed, if staff failed in their duties, that must be addressed, not ignored. An investigation into any questionable 911 center response. 2, mandatory training for all 911 dispatchers with specific emphasis on handling active threat situations, gathering critical information, and dispatching without hesitation. A review and update of all 911 protocols so that our response is swift, coordinated, and effective. 4, consolidation. Look into consolidating the 911 center with other counties, seeking a multi-county dispatch center that will save tax dollars to include consolidation efficiency grant incentives from the state and provide growth opportunities for 911 center staff. 5, supervision. Review if the dispatch center is better placed under the authority of the sheriff's office or under the direction of Waushara County Emergency Management. Dispatch encompasses not only police, but also fire and EMS, much like the role of an emergency management director. This is not about blame. This is about responsibility. It is about making sure the next time, God forbid, our children call for help, the system they rely on is ready to respond the way it should. Because if we are not willing to fix this now, then we are accepting that the next time, the outcome might not be so fortunate. Let's do better. Let's act as one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Mott. We do have Lieutenant McElroy here as well, and some other emergency people. So if you have a question for Chief Mott or for any of the others, just let me know and we can ask them at this time. It's kind of new. I mean, we weren't this ETSB. I mean, this is the first we're hearing of it. So, but I echo what you say. I think with tight budgets, I think a multi-county dispatch is going to be coming regardless anyway, because I think a lot of smaller counties are going to have to do that to survive. So does anybody have any questions for Chief Mott or any of our other professionals?
I got a question. Have you ever received policies and procedures from 911 dispatch?
I do not have Waushara County's procedures. I have them from my previous agencies that I've worked at, but I have not seen Waushara County's policies.
Okay. Is that abnormal in your history, or would you normally have that?
It's abnormal in that everywhere I worked before had a ETSB, which used to be called a 911 board, and since they've kind of changed it, and that every department I worked on had a representative in that board that shared the policies with us, and they crafted the policies and reviewed them together, so that it's not only police there, it's fire and EMS all working together to look at those policies to make sure we have the best response to our needs.
Can you say again what ETSB stands for?
Emergency Transportation System Board. You guys can call it whatever you want. Like I said, it used to be called a 911 board.
All right, thanks.
That's easier.
Okay. Anything else, or does anyone want to hear from any of the other Lieutenant McElroy or any of our other professionals that are here?
Thank you. Yeah, I think it'd be great to hear from Lieutenant McElroy.
Yes. Just coming forward.
I'm Lieutenant McElroy. I run the 911 dispatch center over at the Sheriff's Department. As Paul Mott said, they were failures that day. I don't dispute that. With the first call, it was no questions were asked. That's a failure on our part. There occasionally calls will happen where Human Services will ask to talk to an officer with the call. There wasn't any talk or sense of danger in the conversation. However, we did not ask any questions, and that is what we need to do. On the second call, the same caller said that she had tried to contact Chief Mott and Sergeant Rosine. Chief Mott wasn't working. I understand why Chief Mott didn't answer his phone. Sergeant Rosine was on another call. I understand why Sergeant Rosine didn't answer his phone. We then transferred that call to SRO Hendrickson. We had 0 questions. That is unacceptable. We did get a third call from Chief Mott providing us more information. And then we tried to see who was close and send the closest officer to that scene. That should not happen. That should be a call over the radio to all officers. There's a potential weapon in that school, and everybody should be heading that way. Since that time, the day of the incident, I did speak with Chief Mott. SRO Hendrickson admitted that mistakes were made on our part that day. I've since had conversations with Department of Human Services, with our dispatchers. I've had conversation with Chief Mott and SRO Hendrickson that day, the Saturday afterwards. When I had a clear head based off of everything that had been going on since that incident, the lack of sleep from that, SRO Hendrickson and I had some more conversations to see what we can do to improve our response, because we have to do better. I have since resent out our policy for call handling, which specifically states where, what, when, and who, and the policy on handling emergency calls. I've also resent out the part of our training manual that deals with high priority calls. We will continue to work better because we have to improve. We have to do better. And that's what I can say. We got lucky that day.
Thank you for your honesty here. Is there any questions for Lieutenant?
I was wondering during that call, or that, that sequence of calls, was EMS ever staged to the?
They were not. That should have happened.
So, we've established we don't have an ETS board or ETSB board or 911 board, but who's responsible for reviewing and keeping the policies and procedures up to date now?
I will say I am.
Okay, so there isn't there isn't any kind of group that's,
No.
you check the policies and.
Go over the policies whenever I adjust policies, I forward them on to the corporation council to make sure they're okay, and then they would be implemented.
Okay. What, how long is a training period before a dispatcher is live? Like going through these policies and procedures, is there
12
ongoing training?
weeks is where I start.
12 weeks?
Depending on, I have had some that have had experience that have been less than 12 weeks. I've had some go as long as 17 weeks where they still weren't ready and were washed out of the program. But my standard is 12 weeks.
Okay, any other questions?
Is there currently any supervisor on duty that oversees the taking of the calls and if they can provide any assistance with the dispatcher?
I am on duty during the day. And I am not in the center itself. I do keep my radio on in my office so I can hear what's going on. I was in there, it was after the subject was in custody, but I'd say within 15 minutes, I was in there asking questions about this incident. Yes.
So there's no one that during the time that the call is coming that they could, hey, I need help here, or could someone give me some assistance, or there's no one doing that?
There's nobody in the room. There's two dispatchers in there and that's what we have with these two dispatchers. You have a question?
We just went through an active shooter drill in Wild Rose a few months ago.
Yep.
So was there any lessons learned from that should have been applied to the situation?
Yeah, it should have been an all call. We're not looking to see who's closest. It should have been, we're calling everybody. There's a possible gun in the school and that didn't happen and it's unacceptable.
Did you or anyone in your department attend and participate in that drill?
I had two dispatchers that were normally working that day, working their shift with that drill. I had a third dispatcher come in and take part in the drill. I was there in the dispatch center that day for the drill. And I participated in a majority of the meetings prior to the training.
So question you might not be able to answer, but you explained that we did have all these failures, but why did we have those failures?
I can't answer that because I don't understand why we don't ask questions. I mean, that's the specific, most important part of our job. That's expected on every call.
What kind of support do you have from the sheriff?
What was that?
What kind of support do you have from the sheriff?
He's there. I mean, I'm there for my people. I will support my people. That's what it is. He lets me do what I believe I need to do for the dispatch center.
Yeah. Can I ask a question unrelated to the school incident?
Yeah, as long as it's dealing with dispatch.
Yeah, it's a dispatch. Gotcha. Jumpy up there. So no, so this question goes back to like when EMS is called in for situations, related to like vehicle incidents. What's the policy for getting EMS involved when there's a vehicle related incident?
You're talking like a car crash?
Yeah, car crash.
Over the past couple of years, I don't know if it was a year or two ago, we have changed kind of the way we do that. With property damage crashes where there are no injuries, if there's a highway speed crash, they get paged out with the fire department to go to those, and then they're automatically with the EMD in a injury crash. They are dispatched to those also.
Okay, so you don't have an all or nothing policy?
For any crash whatsoever?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, have you ever implemented an all or nothing?
Yes.
Okay, was that what was changed like a year and a half ago?
Because that implementing them going as often as they were is what had changed, because they weren't going to any property damage crashes.
Okay.
At one point, we did have any crash that they go, but that included the fender benders in parking lots and things like that. So that's where we adjusted it to a highway speed airbag deployment.
Okay, so can you walk me through how that, like, what drove that change? And then who was involved in implementing the policy change?
That was through several fire officer meetings, which I attend and the fire departments attend and EMS attends. That's what drove that change.
So if I'm hearing this right, so prior to, we'll just call it a year ago to make it easy. So like a year ago, their EMS was not getting dispatched to enough of the vehicle related incidents. Is that accurate?
Correct.
And then, so was there a complaint that came in with that, or was that something that you overheard in one of these
I
meetings?
believe it was discussed, I don't know if it was a complaint, but brought up by fire departments and potentially EMS. I don't know. Keith, did you? Yeah.
Okay. And so then once that was brought up, was that brought to your attention, or was that brought to Wally's attention, or?
Brought to my attention because it would have came up at a fire officers meeting.
Okay, and so then how do you implement that policy change then? Is that just you edit it in your policy and then send an email to the dispatchers, or?
Correct, yeah. What was is in an email sent to dispatchers, this is how we are going to handle our property damage crashes at this point, and explaining the highway speeds and things like that. Yeah. Airbag deployment. Even if there are no reported injuries at that point.
All right, thanks.
Anybody else? Yes.
So Chief Mott had made a couple of references to the sheriff coming into dispatch after a situation, and the sheriff saying, well, we're not gonna make any changes to that. Can you speak to that?
I can't say if I was in there. I don't recall it, but I don't know. I don't recall being there. So I can't speak on something that I don't recall being there for.
The sheriff doesn't drive policy changes. That's something that you review and implement, or are there times when there's sheriff directed policy changes as well?
He can direct policy changes also, yes.
Does that happen often?
No.
Is anybody disciplined over this situation?
It's not complete, but yes.
Okay, does anyone else want to hear from any other professionals, or does anybody else have any more questions for Ryan?
Keith was called on. Maybe we
could come up. Sure. Keith, would you mind coming up? Thank you.
Good evening.
So I was just wondering if you could walk through any dispatch related concerns that you have in light of the mishandling of the school incident. We were informed that an ambulance was not staged for that. Is there other instances where that's happened, where there needs to be a change there? What's your experience been with dispatch?
Yeah, and
Lieutenant McElroy had mentioned that EMS was not staged for that. We've been working hand in hand with the school districts and the school administrators for about the last 2 years now. That was spearheaded by Alan Lucchini as our emergency manager to kind of bring all of the resources together, EMS, fire, police, sheriffs, in order to improve our response to school incidents. And so we've been drilling with that quite heavily. And that day you probably definitely did not go in the direction that we had drilled.
Have you had a chance to speak as that group since?
It's on the review on November 12th. The school administration has requested that to be reviewed at our next meeting.
All right. Any other questions for Keith?
Yeah, I got a question for him. So Chief Mott has in his presentation, it talked about a standalone department with 911 dispatch. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, 40% of the public safety access centers in Wisconsin are standalone centers outside of sheriff's departments. Like Chief Mott, I myself have a background in dispatching. I was the regional dispatch supervisor for the largest ambulance company in Illinois. Remember, I'm from the South, I apologize. And then I also ran the communication center and the dispatch center for Ascension Healthcare with Spirit Helicopters. So I had 150 nurses and paramedics that worked underneath me with the helicopter dispatch center. I think since I've come to the county, customer service always needs to be first and foremost. When I think about it as the chief of EMS, my customers aren't just the patient. My customers are the police officers that are on scene, the first responders, the firefighters. And I've gotten the sense that dispatch has a very strong sheriff's focus, and then EMS, fire, and local law enforcement kind of come in, subpar. I've attempted to make policy changes and to ask for things to be changed. It's a crapshoot whether we're going to get agreement to that or we don't get agreement to that. When I came in, I did present the accreditation standards for ambulances, the national standards, which was my goal that I always try to shoot for. I was told at that point in time that dispatch would not be able to make those national standards for ambulances, that they would not be able to do that. So customer focused, that's got to be huge. I would be in support of seeing dispatch move towards a separate agency with more supervision. When we started the communication committee, I thought that was actually going to be, which some of you guys sit on, I thought that that's what was going to be what Chief Mott was envisioning, and kind of brought that up, and I was told, no, that's not what we're doing here. We're looking at replacing of the radios. But I was very vocal in that committee meeting about, that's the direction I thought things need to go.
Do you have a copy of the policies and procedures of 911 dispatch?
I do not. I've requested them 3 times, several times through the sheriff, and Stacy copied in on both of those, and I still have yet to see the policies. When there's an incident and I do bring it up, I always get reference, well, that's not our policy. This isn't our policy. So every time I get that answer, I have requested a copy of the policies. I still have not received any dispatch policies.
Chief, you've got a long history in EMS. Have you ever worked with a 911 board or an emergency transportation system board before?
In the hospital system with the helicopters, all of our stuff was reviewed, when you're a for-profit agency, you're held to the standard quite a bit, but not a public agency, no.
Any other questions?
Yep, so you mentioned that you were trying to make some policy changes, and you ran into a roadblock. Who was that roadblock? Was that Brian or the sheriff? Do you know?
I'm not 100% sure on the absolute roadblock of where it was going. What I was referencing was, being dispatched to, Ryan alluded to the property damage versus a injury type of accident. You gotta remember that they were considering a property damage when the caller called and said that there was no injury that occurred. These callers could be disoriented because of being in the accident. They could have been intoxicated. They may not have, they could have been on drugs and don't want to get in trouble. Or it's a passerby that calls in and says, oh, hey, I see this crash. It doesn't look like somebody's hurt. So ambulances weren't being sent to those. After we had a rollover and it was determined that there was a patient there, the ambulance response was delayed by 45 minutes, was when we actually got on scene. So that's what I really used to push that in order for us to be dispatched at the same time that law enforcement was dispatched. We can only do good in our county if we get on scene. Since we've implemented that change, which Ryan has accepted and moved forward with making that change, we have seen our death rates in the county drop to some of the lowest death rates according to the Transportation Safety Committee and Mr. Frost with that committee.
EMS response time is important, isn't it?
We need to be there fast.
Yes.
Especially in a rural area. If we're not involved from the get-go, then bad things happen because we don't have specialty care centers. We're fortunate to have Wild Rose Hospital here, but we've got an hour transport once we get to you. So our paramedics have to stay pretty savvy to keep you alive for an hour. Delay that with added time, it makes it critical.
And are all motor vehicle accident injuries apparent?
No, absolutely not. So I was dispatched to a call and the dispatch had relayed to us that the patient was out of the vehicle and just had a bruise. That's what they were told by law enforcement. They were just relaying it. As much as I love our law enforcement community, they are not paramedics. It was actually a patient that was critically injured and ended up going to a trauma center and being into surgery once we got that patient into surgery.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Keith. Any other comments, thoughts? No.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion for Administrator Cap to review the reporting structure of 911 dispatch and just determine the feasibility of moving it to the government center, as well as assembling an emergency transportation system board, 911 board. Sounds like something that we could benefit from having emergency management participate in, as well as the other agencies affected by 911 dispatch for feedback on policies, reviewing them. It seems clear that we need more eyes on this and better participation.
I would also ask that if we could include Jesse, if it's all right, with that motion to have that brought to the public safety first to look at and review. Sure. Okay. That motion. Okay, so there's a motion. Did you have that written down or you have it here?
Yes, did you get the motion?
I have the motion, Urban, Bosshard second. There we go. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone want that read back to them? Do you understand what it is?
I just wanted to clarify, what are we bringing back to the public safety?
The what Megan is going to come up with for this review, so we can look at it first and have a question there and then bring that to the board here. Okay, does anyone?
Desiree, you want me to read this back once more?
I can re-listen to the recording.
Okay.
Is anyone
Was I
else?
mic'd up the whole time? Or you got it?
I heard you.
I heard you.
I wrote it down in the notepad and I can re-listen.
Kind of chopped, so okay, thanks.
All right, is there any discussion on this? Okay. Hearing none, then we'll go ahead and vote on that. Okay, and that motion passes.
Oh. Could I make one more motion from this too? Sorry, so I'd like to make a motion that all agencies working with 911 emergency dispatch in Washera County receive a current copy of policies and procedures as they're written today. I'd like to see that given to them, emailed to them or sent to them, no later than end of business, October 31st.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mosling.
Okay, 1 minute, I have to. I have to write this down. So that was seconded by,
Tom Mosling.
okay, now you have to wait for a minute. Please.
Okay, let our technology catch up. Okay, well, you all know what the motion is and we've had a second. So is there any discussion of the motion? Okay, then go ahead and vote on that. Okay, and that motion as well passes. All right, here we go. Okay, we'll move into the follow-up regarding Sheriff K-9 payments.
Okay, so at the last county board meeting, you'll recall the county board had directed that the information concerning the K-9 stipend that was received by Sheriff Zilke be forwarded to DCI to review to see whether or not there should be an agent assigned and possible criminal charges. That's what they do, is criminal charges. And that if they had declined, then to look at the other options. So since the last meeting, I did send to DCI a copy of all of the information concerning the K-9 payments, including the memorandums that I had written to former County Administrator Robert Civic when he had. So if you go back in history, at the time that Sheriff Zilke was running for office, he was a deputy in Washera County as a K-9 officer. After he was elected, there was some discussion at the county board about whether or not he would continue to be a K-9 officer. At that time, I believe we had 2 dogs. I believe, I could be mistaken, but I think we were at 2 at that moment in time. There was discussion that the 2 dogs would remain and that Argo would continue as a K-9 while we were in the process of getting a 3rd dog and getting that dog trained so that we would always still have 2 full-time dogs. I couldn't find any documentation that shows whether that was going to remain, that there would be 3 or how that would work. We currently have 4, but I don't find documentation other than saying you're going to stay while we're training up the 3rd one. After Sheriff Zilke took office, there was some discussion with County Administrator Civic about the K-9 stipend. The K-9 stipend is something that was negotiated with the WPPA union and the county for K-9 officers. That includes an additional payment every month for housing the dog, taking care of the dog, having that dog at their home. As Sheriff Zilke is not part of the union, those payments stopped upon his election. County Administrator Civic then requested some information on that, and I prepared a memo to him with my position on whether or not the K-9 payments should continue with the sheriff. Mr. Civic did not agree with my opinion, and he then wrote his own memorandum that detailed how Sheriff Zilke would continue to get paid the stipend. So all of those memos, and then he asked me to do a follow-up memo regarding the union contract. So all three of those memos, my two, the memo from Attorney Civic, as well as the resolutions concerning the pay set for the sheriff at the beginning of, prior to him running, because the county has to set that pay when papers are taken out. The information regarding our different policies regarding K-9 dogs was sent to DCI after the county board meeting. In addition, the resolution that was regarding the purchase of the new K-9 and the continuation of Argo during the cost of that new dog was also sent to DCI. I had a conversation with Agent Jeff Wish, who is our representative out of the Appleton office that covers this area. What Mr. Wish's, Agent Wish's job is that he takes in the initial complaints, gathers the information, and then when he has all of the information, he meets with at least one assistant attorney general. In this case, he met with two assistant attorney generals and his supervisor. The assistant attorney generals that are part of this conversations are ones that are assigned to DCI that would be the prosecutors in a case if DCI decided to move forward with a case. And then his administrator. They have what they call a pre-screening conference. Prior to the pre-screening conference, Agent Wish reached out to me and asked me if I could get him the amounts that were paid to Sheriff Zilke over the course of the time. If I could get any training records that we had for K-9 Argo after Sheriff Zilke took office in 2019, as well as a copy. I have previously sent him a copy of our policies, which are housed in the Lexipol system on the internet. And because I was forwarding that information to them, I also needed to send to him a document that indicated that I had printed them off on a certain date and that these were the policies as of that date. I also then shared with him, he wanted to know how long those policies had been in effect, if they were in effect at the time in 2019 when this started, or if they were changed after that. So I got a log of when those policies were. That's all right in the computer system. I could print it off. And then I sent all of that information to them. They held their pre-screening conference and I received a call from him on September 26th of this year after the pre-screening conference. Agent Wish advised me that at that pre-screening conference, the deputy attorney generals and his administrator made the decision that DCI would not be proceeding with a further investigation. He advised that based upon all of the facts known, this is not something that they would consider as part of their public integrity type investigation as misconduct in public office, because the memo that was written by Mr. Civic did authorize K-9 payments at one time. And whether the payments should have continued or should have stopped based upon that memo was not necessarily, that is not something that they would consider misconduct, because there was original authorization. It could be that the payments should have stopped because the terms of the memorandum were not followed, but that would be something that the county board would need to address as part of the memorandum, not a public misconduct. He then indicated that the other option that they had discussed for a criminal case would be something that did it reach the levels of theft by fraud? The attorneys who would be the ones who had to prosecute it were concerned that because in order to prove theft by fraud, you have to prove intention. So they would have to prove that Sheriff Zilke was intentionally trying to defraud the county. And there had been some statements in the meeting with Sheriff Zilke that yes, the dog had not been certified, but he had moved it to a PR comfort office, a service type dog position that did not need to be certified. The DCI agents and attorney generals are aware that there are some departments that do have a service type dog in their employ. And as the sheriff, he would have some authority to be able to allocate what type of, how assets were allocated. Now, whether or not he could allocate this as a PR dog and not have it certified, again, is a determination as to whether or not it met the terms of the memo and whether or not that would be a reason to continue to get paid. But because he has some inherent authority in how assets are allocated, and because it is not something that does not happen in other agencies to have a service type animal, the attorney generals looking at the case did not believe that they could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that there was an intention to defraud the county of the money. They also were concerned about the amount of money and what level that would be as a felony. There was some indication from the attorney generals that even if this was not a sheriff with that type of authority, this would not be at the level that they would use state resources for. So they had made the decision that they were not going to move forward with any type, they were not going to take the next step, which would be to assign an agent to the case to do a further investigation. They did indicate, they did say that they would give us some guidance to consider. Certainly the county board could refer this to a different law enforcement agency to look at. I don't know what that outcome would be, knowing what DCI has said, but I'm not a law enforcement agency that does investigations, so I can't give you that information. There certainly is civil remedies that you can take. While there are other departments that do have a PR and a service animal, is that what was intended here? The memo that was written by Mr. Civic lays out the various reasons of when Sheriff Zilke was going to be allowed to have or paid the stipend. In that memorandum, it says that
It's 7B.
thank you. That there would be that he would have to, that the directives would be that the compensation will continue until one or more of the following occurs: that he is no longer the sheriff, that was met, that Zilke or the dog Argo no longer serve as a canine law enforcement officer or law enforcement dog respectively, Zilke and the dog are no longer possess necessary certifications as canine law enforcement officer, law enforcement dog respectively. The death or retirement of the dog, that we sell the dog or convey title to another person or entity, or any official action by the Washington County Board of Supervisors eliminating or modifying the canine unit, resulting in the sheriff not having a dog at that point in time. So those are the things that were laid out for pay. The dog did undergo some certification training in 2019, which is the first year of the sheriff's, when Sheriff Zilke became sheriff. From speaking to DCI, most training is done on an annual basis. There is not a standard of training for set by the state as to a certain number of hours. And our policies do require training, but again, it's not clear exactly what training would happen and how much in those policies. So there was training in 2019. Based upon all of that information, I think that what the board's options are is to, one, you could refer it to another law enforcement agency if you wished. For a criminal investigation, we would have to figure out which agency would take that. Since the state will not take it, you would be looking at another county agency taking it, probably not one in the surrounding area, but that was something that is an option. The other option that you have is to determine that the terms of the memorandum were not met and that Sheriff Zilke should repay the funds that he received as the canine stipend. If you were to ask him to repay the full amount from 2019 through 2024, that number is $26,675. If you did not require the payment for 2019 because there was some training done in 2019, that number is $22,175. Your other option is to say that you believe that the intent of the memorandum was fulfilled by having the dog there in a service type capacity, and that you are not requesting any repayment.
Very good. Thank you, Ruth. Does anybody have any questions for Ruth based on what she has just said?
Any indication, Ruth, what this through another county would cost our county?
To have a law enforcement agency?
Check into the accusations.
Typically, when we've had to refer things to outside law enforcement agencies because of a conflict of interest, it is a mutual aid type thing, and they have not charged us. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So in our current canine policy, there isn't really any mention of public relations canine, or like what that would look like or entail in here. There is a section speaking to failure to successfully complete training. So even though it's not required in Wisconsin, our policy says any canine team failing to graduate or obtain certification shall not be deployed in the field for tasks the team is not certified to perform until graduation or certification is achieved. So in light of that, what's frustrating with this is the dog should have, in hindsight, the dog should have been retired, and the payments would have ceased at retiring. With the dog not being retired, further looking into these policies, anytime that dog was not with Sheriff Zilke in his office, by policy, it needed to be locked in a crate at his house. And so it seems like a poor use of, if Canine Argo was on Waushara County payroll for the entirety of that time, anytime the dog was not being used for PR purposes, it was locked in a crate if policies were followed. And so if the training, in my opinion, if the training was completed through up to, is that correct, where it was in March of 2019, there was like a note at the top of there that said something about June.
The training records that I have, there was a training that was completed in January of 2019 and a second training that was completed in March of 2019.
Okay, what's this note that says 8 hours submitted to ACADIS?
So ACADIS is the system that is set up by the Wisconsin Training and Standards Board. And once a year, we have to, every officer's training has to be submitted to the state training and board. It is not done monthly. I believe that it's done once a year with all of the training that has been done. So my belief that that handwriting on the top of that is looks to me to be the handwriting of the administrative person who submits the stuff to the state. So I believe that it's not an additional training. It was that these trainings were submitted on that date to the state portal.
All right, that makes sense. Based on, it's pretty clear this memorandum, that this memorandum, being that the county board of supervisors sets the rate of pay for the sheriff prior to elections, and it's based on the position, not the individual. There's no way for the board of supervisors to anticipate if there would be a canine present with the sheriff, or the sheriff would be a canine handler. So,
except that if we knew that the person that was a canine handler had already indicated that he would be running.
right, so how should this have been handled? And is there something that we should do now and to, if this ever happens again, that there's something in place where it's like, here's how we handle canine pay, even though a sheriff is non-union, like, does this memorandum cover that? This seems like it's just personalized, just strictly for Walter, right?
It is personalized to Sheriff Zilke because it was my opinion that because the county board had not addressed it prior to papers being taken out at the time that they needed to, that they could not. The statutes are clear that compensation for elected officials needs to be set prior to individuals formally running for sheriff, so that they know what the compensation is when they are running, and that the county board does not have the authority to change that after the fact. There are some things that can be adjusted. For instance, if part of the package is that the elected official is, and this is for all elected officials, not just sheriffs, okay? If the elected official is on county health insurance, and the way that the papers are set up is that the elected official will have access to benefits such as health insurance and state retirement in the same manner as other county employees. If those rates change midterm, those changes can be made. If the county board were to change the amount that the employees need to contribute to health insurance, that can be changed midterm. That's not pay. but it's set up that way in the thing. So when this initially happened, it was my opinion that this was additional pay and could not be modified. Mr. Civic did not agree with me, and he overrode that decision after review of the statutes in his own mind and set it up. My recommendation would be that if we had any inkling that a canine officer might run for sheriff, that at the time that the wages are set up, we would do something with that canine pay the same way that we do with other benefits such as health insurance, and say something like, if the sheriff is a canine officer and the dog is not retired, that canine pay will be disseminated to that sheriff in the same manner as is done per the current union contract. And then you don't have to go into like the specifics of what that exact amount would be. It could follow the contract, but it would be set forth ahead of time, and it would go into effect only if you had a canine officer. So that's what I would recommend going forward in the future, not relying on this memo that was written to address this particular situation after the fact.
Okay, thanks. So I think I agree with the decision to create a memorandum. So we need to support our canines and the handlers that are caring for them at their home. The problem is that the last training was in 2019. And so in 2020, March of 2020, when that training expired, according to the very memorandum that initiated the pay in the first place, Sheriff Zielke should have no longer received payments for Argo from the time beyond that Argo was no longer certified. So I would make a motion that Sheriff Zielke would pay back the amount from 2020 forward with interest.
So that's the 22 is 175.
I just ask a clarification before there's a second. What are you?
So
What it would be the set amount of interest?
So it'd be 22,175. And then the interest rate would be whatever set by the state of Wisconsin for payback. That can range, I know that can range.
Yes.
So my understanding is that it can be as high as 12%. Seems like a standard rate is like 10%, but it can be lower than that as well. So I don't know if someone else would have a recommendation of what the interest rate should be on payback like that.
It'd be based upon the interest rate that was prevalent for that year. I mean, the standard.
But I need to know, but the interest rate for what? The interest rate on a savings account, the interest rate on a loan, the interest rate, like I'm just trying to get this clarified because I don't know what interest rate to look at. If I were to take somebody to court and get a judgment, then that interest rate is typically 12% per year, right? On a small claims judgment, if it's done that way. If somebody is paying on back taxes have a different interest rate that is like, it's an interest and penalties, right? But it's set by statute. So I'm not trying to be difficult, but I need to know what this looks like. So, and if you say the interest rate of that year, what standard are you looking at for the interest rate? Like what kind of account or? Yeah, no, I'm just asking too, because I don't want to, I don't want to be confused after you leave and then I don't know.
So the 12%, if that was what you went with, that would be for the 4 years. I assume the 5 years.
Yeah, that's what it would be.
And the total of that.
If that
would be compounded. I mean, that would be your question.
Right, there's all kinds of ways to do it. You know, in the past, when we've had, judgments for, large amounts for, you know, like an ambulance bill or AODA treatment at a hospital, or something like that. It's been several years since we've done judgments because we've been using the state debt collection, service. But in some of those cases, we waived the interest because the principal was so big and we were dealing with individuals in the community who had needed assistance. And now we're having to pay. Again, that's a completely different issue. But so across the years, we don't have a set county policy on what interest we would charge. And so I would just need the motion to be clear as to what that interest rate should be and how it should be calculated.
I think it should be calculated in the same way that we would charge someone who owed taxes or anything else from the county.
Okay. That I can figure out from the treasurer's office can help me with that. So if you include plus interest calculated in the same manner as delinquent taxes,
Yeah,
I can figure that out.
I think that would be a fair way to do it.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Urban, a second by Mr. King. Is there any discussion? Okay.
You're gonna hate me for this, but years 2020, 2021, and 2020 or 2022 partially, those are the COVID years. Should we be verifying that training was available? Were they for sure? Were they? Okay.
Everybody else did it. I seen the receipts, everybody else did it.
Could I ask you, Ruth, so I'm sure, like, if this is fun, the defense will be that Article 3101, where the sheriff reserves the right to assign or not assign canine duties. Is that gonna be the sticking point there? Is that gonna be?
So, I don't know what the defense would be. I will tell you that, certainly if this motion passes, then I will, contact Sheriff Zilke and tell him that this is the decision of the board. If he tells me no, then I will be, going to Megan and potentially the executive committee if she directs to ask that we retain outside counsel to file the civil lawsuit against the sheriff. It's not because I'm not qualified to do it, but a lot of other pieces of my job rely on a continuing working relationship with the sheriff's department. And I don't feel that it is appropriate for a person in my position to sue any of our employees or elected officials, so that I can continue to do the rest of my job. So I'm just gonna be upfront with it. I will certainly, if this motion passes, I will certainly reach out and try to get it resolved without having to go to court. But if it has to go to court, that is going to be my request.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Yes.
A little more clarification. So why is this not considered compensation?
That board prior to his election and it just seems to me like this is compensation we weren't allowed to get him.
I agree. I was overridden by the prior county administrator.
Yeah, I know that, but legally did he have the right to do that?
Probably a question you can't answer.
He was my boss. And the memo went to the county board and
Yeah, there was no county board involvement in this. It was a memorandum set forth by Robert Civic to HR, like, you will pay this going forward because this memorandum says so. And so that's where I'm like, in the very same memorandum, we've got to follow these trigger points of when that pay is no longer issued. This is the only document we have to go off of, so.
I guess, is there any other discussion? I guess that is kind of my sticking point in this as well, is that if it's fought and we lose, which, you know, I don't know where that'll be, but if we do, it could end up actually costing us more money. There's a reason why the DCI didn't take it up as well. So part of it is, you know, are they?
DCI was based on criminal.
Right, but their decision was kind of like the same thing. It wasn't the kind of money that they would want to go out and hire an attorney for. Because it was enough of a gray area. That's what I'm gathering with that.
It's
For criminal.
right, there is a completely different standard approved between criminal and civil. There's a lower burden approved for civil. This would be basically a contract type case. Where the county had entered into an agreement with Sheriff Silky, and that the terms of that agreement was not fulfilled. Is there some risk that a judge could say, well, county, it is now 2025, and you also had a responsibility to enforce the agreement and you didn't? So in equity's sake, we're going to do this and maybe not award the full amount. Sure, anytime you go to court, there's a risk. But I think that risk is different, and it certainly is something that the county board needs to assess in making it, but the burden of proof is completely different between civil and criminal. Right now, what the civil action would be is that we're saying, listen, former administration agreed to make these payments to you based upon these qualifications. You didn't hold up your end of the bargain. You know you didn't hold up your end of the bargain, and we think that you should repay it.
Okay.
Hopefully the sheriff will do the right thing, and just pay the money back.
Right.
Any other discussion? I just have one additional question, I guess. The very last paragraph of that memorandum, it says the Corporation Council will consider and analyze the contents of this memorandum, including the directives issued. Was there any correspondence regarding that with your opinion that this was not appropriate?
What he wanted was how this memorandum affected the WPPA contract and whether or not we needed to modify the contract with the union. And there was a second memo from me dated March 28th of 2019 indicating that that memorandum did not impact the WPPA contract because he is not a union member and we did not need to modify our union contract based upon that memo.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other discussion? Nothing, all right. So does anybody need any clarification? All right, then we'll go ahead and look. Okay, and that vote passes. So we will be asking you. All right, get back to my agenda here. All right, our next is the Public Safety Committee update on discussions surrounding the Sheriff's Department.
Okay, so at the public safety meeting, the committee talked about the comments from last month's public from the county board meeting. At that time, basically what the the public comments, had to deal with sexual impropriety in the sheriff's department and possible harassment within that department. Since that time of that meeting, memos have been sent to all county employees, not just sheriff's department employees, but every single county employee, explaining that there were concerns that the county board was considering about violations of harassment policies in the workplace, possibly leading to toxic work environments and or hostile work environments. In addition, with that memorandum, all employees were advised that the county would be retaining outside counsel to do an employment type investigation. So, and there was a copy of a complaint form that had been drafted by myself and HR Director Deb Danker for the purposes of, we had had some communication with Chief Mott since the last meeting, and he had indicated that some of the individuals that had been contacting him had more of an employment-based concern and not a criminal-based concern, and he wasn't really sure where to refer them or how to handle that. And so we came up with a form that he could have at his disposal to hand out to individuals to be able to get their concerns to HR. That information then was also shared with all of our employees, as well as indications to them that that Ms. Danker would meet with any of them in any location that they wanted to. It did not have to be here at the government center. In addition, all of that information in the public comments was referred to our insurance company for assistance in finding a qualified employment law attorney who specializes in investigating harassment complaints within the workforce. They did assign an attorney, Oyvind Winstrom, from a law firm that they have worked with before, and that he has done employment type investigations, both for employers and for employees. And so he has lots of experience in employment law. He will be here on site tomorrow to start the interview process with some of our employees. I would note that we have received no new complaints, either from anyone who has contacted Chief Mott or in respect to the memo that was sent out to all employees. So we are starting this investigation with known entities, that being people who had been part of the prior investigation, disciplinary investigation done by the Sheriff's Department, and who had made some statements to the Sheriff's Department. So that is where we are starting the investigation. And again, leaving it open that there may be additional people that need to be talked to. Attorney Winstrom will be working solely with Ms. Danker and with County Administrator Cap on this matter. I will be helping to facilitate any rooms that they need or any assistance in coordinating things. But in speaking to the attorney and also in having conversations with Megan and Deb on how best to do this, we have decided that it would be best if I was not not personally involved in the interview process. I know that there are a lot of things being said out in the public that impact upon some of our employees' trust in me. That is something that I will need to work on rebuilding with them. And I think that while I can sit here and say that I didn't do anything wrong, that I did do things that I didn't, if I didn't act, it was because I didn't know. But I've also been here for a lot of years and I can't say for 100% certainty that somebody didn't come to me with something off the cuff that I didn't follow up on. And for the integrity of the investigation, for the benefit of all of our employees and the public, I think that it's best that this is handled outside of my office. And so that's why that decision has been made. But that process has been started, and that those interviews will start taking place tomorrow. In addition, when we were at public safety, we also talked about a prior discrimination complaint and potential not following victim rights completely complaint against the sheriff's department by some residents in the town of Mount Morris that had previously been addressed through internal channels. We also had an attorney assigned to do that. That process did not go well. And they had brought up and sent emails to all of you that they would like that matter readdressed. So that was determined that that issue should also be readdressed. In speaking to Attorney Winstrom and describing the nature of that, he said that is not really an employment type investigation. That is an investigation on whether or not law enforcement was doing their job and whether or not they were doing their job appropriately and doing it fairly and equally across the board in a non-discriminatory manner. That is not something that he is trained in and did not feel comfortable doing that. He recommended that we consider retaining an investigator who handles those type of situations. So in looking into that situation further, there are several ex-law enforcement individuals who now in their retirement do these type of investigations to look into policies and procedures and whether or not sheriff's departments or police departments or any law enforcement are handling matters in an appropriate way. So we are in the process of attempting to get one of those on board. We've been getting assistance from our insurance company. They have a list of people that they've used in the past with different.
Could I ask that whoever we bring in or consider for this investigation not be within 150-mile radius of us?
Yeah, so the individual that they have in mind, and I was hoping to have this all lined up, but by the time today came, we haven't gotten the details worked out. The individual that they are considering is an ex police officer that last worked for the city of Waukesha, that never worked in a county department, so has never been tied to the Badger Sheriff's Association, and has no sheriff department affiliations. Has only worked in city law enforcement agencies. And so that is the individual that they are leaning towards trying to get in.
Is it, so will public safety have input into who's chosen, or will the Board of Supervisors?
I guess that is up to you. That is, this is one of the people that they are indicating. I've been kind of relying on the insurance company to give me different suggestions, and that is a person that they've indicated. If you want to have a list of people and go from there, I certainly can get that from them. We were trying to get something lined up so the process could get started right away and not continue to linger.
Yeah, that'd be good. Do they just do the recommendation, or do they put it like an ad? Can we put an ad on WileyNet for seeking a private investigator, like former FBI?
We can do this however you want. This is not something that has been done before. So I went with the resources that I'm aware of. But however you would like to do that, we can certainly do that.
Is it, do we have to like work through the insurance company to choose someone to investigate, or?
So as part of our insurance policy, we have pre-claim coverage. Pre-claim coverage does not mean that whoever the insurance company helps us retain is looking to cover things up or try to stop a lawsuit. What it means is that they, and because we had a pre-claim person before on a case that went all the way through courts, but what they do is they look at whatever we're asking them to investigate. We know that if there is problems, it may end up in a lawsuit, so they have somebody on board. The benefit to us is it is covered by our insurance premium, and it is not an additional cost out of pocket to the county.
Would there be an advantage? I'm just wondering if there'd be an advantage to us, you know, posting this on our own and having this investigator report to the board of supervisors as like a sworn in officer of the board of supervisors that would report back with the investigation.
I can't answer that question. I've never been through something like this. I don't know the advantages and disadvantages of that.
What are your concerns there, Jesse?
Well, my concerns is public perspective for one, when you're dealing with an investigator appointed by the insurance company. And two, like, we've got to get to the bottom of this. Is that so? I'm going to be very curious to see how Attorney Winstrom is he going to be looking at this, how this disciplinary report was handled in August of 2022? Is that?
He will be looking at employment related issues. He will not be looking at anything that is potentially criminal.
But I mean, so if he looks at this report and says, well, we have a zero tolerance sexual harassment policy, and this person should have warranted an investigation. Is that something that this attorney would surface, like, this should have warranted investigation? Would they give an opinion on that?
I think that he would give an opinion on that. That particular memo was discussed with him. And, you know, and then he reminded us of the statutory protections of law enforcement that go outside of the union. When you and I had spoke previously, I apologize. I had missed that section. I had forgotten about that piece with the due process. We had talked about due process anyways, in a general sense, right? That we don't just fire people without due process, so that, you know, we're creating that culture in our employment. But he went over all of that. So he did talk about that. He did talk about, but he was mostly looking at it from like an employment perspective. He did not give us an opinion as to whether or not it should have been referred for a further criminal investigation. But that is something we certainly could have the investigator do, that is also doing the investigation on the alleged discriminatory practices.
What's the rest of the board think on insurance recommended investigator versus us as a board of supervisors putting out an ad and interviewing investigators to look into this ourselves?
It's so new to all of us. I don't know that we really have had experience in it either way. I mean, if you know of a place where it didn't go well for somebody, let us know that maybe.
Yeah, I can't reference where this is a first for me too. I'm just questioning
Yeah.
what the best way is to move forward on this, so. But at a minimum, I would prefer that whoever we work with is not someone that's from within 150 miles of Washera County. And I would like whatever for starters, whoever the insurance company recommends, or they have a list that they recommend, that we could review that. We've got we've got this board meeting coming up for the budget in November 4th, so it's pretty quick turnaround. If they could have something to us that we could review at that point, I think that would be pretty expedient. And so that we can have some say in who we're bringing in to investigate this.
Sure. Is there any other thoughts? Go ahead.
Yeah, for some type of a resume?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I look at this as we're reviewing past history, what kind of law enforcement they were in, what their experience is, if this is something that they're doing now in their retirement, what are some past cases that they've handled
Well,
in
if we can find that, get that list before the meeting, we can check into that ourselves a little bit as well. Do some checking on those individuals or whatever.
Yeah, I think that would be as transparent as we can have this, who we're choosing, why, and then that we, as a board, we reviewed whoever we're bringing in, because it's a very serious matter. And I would like to get to the bottom of this proactively rather than defensively for once.
I think we all kind of agree. I mean, I can see a consensus, is there any other discussion following that? We can just send it in as a recommendation.
I have a question regarding the complaint, the citizen complaint. If you bring out inside or outside investigator in, what are some of the remedies that they could have at their disposal for us?
I guess it depends on what they find.
Because they obviously couldn't proceed with anything criminal because they're not attached to or affiliated with it.
Correct. I mean, I suppose they could speculation. I suppose there could be a recommendation that certain issues need to be referred either to DCI or to another outside law enforcement agency for a criminal investigation, that they feel that there is enough there to get that looked at from the criminal lens. They could find that there are policy violations and that there needs to be updated policies, training on the policies, that there needs to be discipline, that certain individuals need to be moved forward to the more formal process of termination. They would not be able to do any of those things. They could make those recommendations. And then depending upon what they recommended, then we would have to go through the process. If it was individual employees who are under the union contract, we would have to then go through the union contract process to handle that. So I think those are some of the kinds of things that they could possibly recommend, but I don't know for sure, Jay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there any other?
I got one other question, yes. So we settle on an investigator, they come in. I guess what I would like to see happen is for every active duty sheriff's deputy that's currently active in Washera County, that their personal file is checked through to surface any of these type of reports. That, because my understanding is that some in 2022 is when Deb came on board. Is that correct?
I believe it was Paul. Yep.
So my concern is, our policy now is that these deputies' personnel files are stored in HR, that, all that information is at HR. Well, anything prior to 2022, that we don't know if that's in HR. So we've got 50-ish deputies that, you know, are we going to, how many more of these reports like this are sitting there that were mishandled? That's what I see an investigator come to look into. Like, Megan does not have the margin to go through 50 different employee files to see what's lingering in there. That's where the investigator comes in. It's like, we want to make sure that there isn't anything like this. Any more skeletons in the file cabinets here. So is with the, I guess my question is, an investigator that's recommended by the insurance company, are we going to be able to direct them to investigate something like that?
I would have to find out.
I would say if they wouldn't, we could reject them too.
Well, when this originally came from public safety to talk about this particular citizen complaint, right? It was not an overall investigation of the sheriff's department. That particular citizen complaint then was forwarded to the individual who was going to be doing the employment investigation. And when we had the initial meeting with him, he said, this really isn't employment related. This is more this is what I suggest you do. And so the only question that I asked was about addressing this particular complaint. I did not ask about reviewing every single deputy's file. That may change. The insurance company may not want to be involved in that at all, because that's not necessarily a specific enough thing that it would fall under our pre-claim policy. So that question I had not even posed to the insurance company, because I was not aware that that was something that the board wanted until right this minute. So I don't have an answer for you on that, but I will get all of that information before the November 4th meeting.
Okay, that'd be great.
Any other comments?
Just one comment, at that complaint by a citizen.
Yeah.
There was a 911 complaint involved in that there never was a response by the sheriff's department.
Can you make sure you're speaking your mic?
I thought that there never was a response by the sheriff's department. There's a 911 complaint within their complaint. So I just make sure that that's not lost in the shuffle, so to speak.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And I just, Mr. Urban.
Yeah.
Are you looking at a completely independent investigator to investigate basically both of these situations?
Well, if the so I guess the case that the insurance company is currently recommending an investigator to look into, aside from this report that's surfaced. If that is not something that same investigator can take on, then I would recommend, yeah, we hire an investigator to come in, comb through these things, so that we're proactively looking, like, were there other disciplinary reports that were handled in the manner that this one was? Because I am not okay with anything in this report and how it was handled. And so if there's a pattern, if there's more of these type of quote unquote disciplinary reports in the files, I want to know about them, because it's that to me, that is a big problem.
Okay.
Any other comments?
All right. Very good. All right, with that then we'll move on. Consideration possible action on the following resolution and ordinances. Resolution number
24-10-25, resolution to make a sole source determination, NV Technologies Fire and Security LLC. Is there a motion for this? Motion by Piaski, is there a second? Is there a second? Second by Waddle. Is there any discussion? Anyone want any clarification? Is in our packet what it is. All right, hearing none, we can proceed to vote. Okay, and that resolution passes. Ordinance number 702, an ordinance repealing Waushara County Code, chapter 26, article 2, ordinance number 35, large gatherings. Is there a motion? A motion by Mosley, second by Peterson. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we go ahead and vote.
Hi, I'm sorry. Is it too late to bring up discussion?
People voted.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not on the
Did
phone.
you want a clarification on something?
Well, it was just, it kind of reads a little funny where it says, now therefore the county board of supervisors does hereby ordain as, and then the next line is be it further ordained. So I wasn't sure if something was missing there or.
I don't have it.
No,
I don't have
it.
I wrote it really fast after the last meeting, so I maybe made a mistake in it, to be honest, if I can just look at the language.
703.
Sorry, I was shuffling to see which one it was that was.
Oh, this is the wrong one. We're talking about this one.
Number 20, article 26.
Oh, no. Article 20, no, 7, that's not the right ordinance. Because it's not Article 26. Oh, yeah, I did. Yep.
We're repealing Waushara County Code, chapter
Okay.
26.
Yes.
Am I showing you the wrong?
Nope, you were showing me the right one. Yes, it is missing words, so please just put this over to the November meeting because I did not finish that sentence.
Okay.
So I need to correct this and bring it back.
Okay. That is not an issue for tonight. Okay, ordinance number 703, an ordinance amending chapter 2, article 2 of Waushara County Code, removing or correcting outdated references to reflect the current structure. Is there a motion for this?
So let's skip the last one.
Oh, motion by Bosser. Okay, and second? Second by Wakely. All right, is there any discussion?
Okay, hang on. Who was motion?
Motion by Bossard, second by Jenna Wakely. Okay, go ahead and vote on that then. Okay, and that ordinance passes. Ordinance number 704, an ordinance amending chapter 26, article 1, Waushara County Code, amending forfeiture amounts. Is there a motion for this?
To approve.
Motion by Waddle, there's second by Johnson. Any discussion? Okay, see the vote. And that ordinance passes as well. Ordinance number 705, an ordinance amending chapter 1 Waushara County Code, amending the warrant fee and updating the citations process. Is there a motion for this? Motion by Peterson, second. Second by Wakely. Any discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. Okay, and that ordinance passes. With that, I will ask for any board suggestion for future agenda items. You're not coming down anyway. Yes, Mr. Weedle.
If there is such a full agenda, again, could we have a recess somewhere in the middle?
Sure. You know what?
You can call for that. at
Just,
any-
yeah, anytime you want to, Bob, just bring it up there. Sorry about that. Maybe we can open up some other bathrooms or something. And I will note too that our meeting again is a couple weeks from now, November 4th at 6 p.m. It'll start out with our 2026 budget public hearing, and then we'll have our regular monthly meeting after that. So with that, I would look for a motion to adjourn. So moved by Mr. Waddle. Is there a second? Second by Peterson. We're adjourned. Thank you.